It was a little harder to fit in with New Zealanders. Sometimes I felt out of place. I felt like I have to prove myself. I wanted to excel. I didn't want to feel like just because I'm an immigrant that I'm not any good. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about something that's more personal. So what is it like to move to a completely different country with no family around? Will I ever move back to the Philippines? I will answer that. But first, I want to share with you my experience in moving here and what it was like for me. So I've actually been living in New Zealand for almost 10 years, and for only about a year and a half of those, I lived here with my family, and the rest of the time, I've been completely on my own. When I first moved here, it was definitely a challenge, and adjusting here took some decent time. It was definitely difficult at the very beginning, and there's still some challenges up to today. So I first moved here with my family when I was about 15 at the time, but back then I was already in my 4th year of high school, so I actually was almost close to graduating. So when I came here, I had to basically restart high school. I had to go through high school and for an extra 3 years, while in the Philippines I would have gone to college or university already. I was actually talking to Guido about this just today, and he actually made a very good point that if you are from a first world country moving to another first world country, for his experience anyway, I'm not saying this is the same for everyone, it's almost easier because there's not much difference. But actually he made such a good point that if you're moving from a third world country to a first world country, it's quite difficult. And I 100% definitely agree, because before this I haven't even been overseas at all. This was my first time moving overseas, so it was really scary and I didn't know what to expect. What I'm actually really grateful for is obviously there's Filipinos here, and that really helped us adjust. So by us I mean my family, so me and my family, it helped us adjust. So we actually found the house right next door to Filipinos. They became long-term friends, and my mom are mostly still friends with them, and we still connect. So having someone from the same culture that's already lived here and had the experience already, and they know what it's like, they were able to kind of help us get through the adjustment process. So that was really nice. And when I went to high school, there were also Filipinos, so we all hanged out together, so that made the adjustment a lot easier. Thankfully I'm already not very fluent, but as you can tell, I'm fluent in English, and I was fluent in English before I even moved to New Zealand. So that wasn't such a hard adjustment in terms of speaking the language, because thankfully in New Zealand English is actually recognized as an official language. And going to high school, the education system here and the way the school works are very different. But if I'm being honest, it's actually much easier in here. High school here, even university, I would say, depending on your course, of course, it was much easier. It was a completely different system. But basically, the education system in the Philippines is a bit hard, and Filipinos would be able to agree on that even when you're just still in high school. And when it's here, it was very different, and that was an easier adjustment. However, what I did struggle with was actually fitting in, and it was obviously easy enough to fit in with Filipinos. We were all on the same culture, so everyone was kind of just friends and accepted each other and supported each other. But it was a little harder to fit in with the Kiwis, or New Zealanders, and that was because it was just they're different culture, and it was just hard to connect. When you're from a different culture, you have a different way of doing things, you have a different way of thinking. So I struggled to fit in, and I felt like in high school and even at work, sometimes I felt out of place. Another thing that I also struggled with, and it's probably because I'm from a third world country, is that I felt like, and I do feel like, I have to prove myself. And maybe that's partly because of my personality, maybe partly because of my childhood, and also partly because of maybe where I came from, and also where I am now. I feel like I just had to prove myself. So in school, I wanted to excel. I didn't want to feel like just because I'm an immigrant that I'm not any good, I suppose. And I do that a lot at work as well. I do try to prove myself a lot at work, and try to go the extra mile. So one of the things I actually struggle with, and it's something that I am mostly struggling with now, is doing the bare minimum. So people say sometimes at work, I'll just do the bare minimum, you get paid, and then you go home and it's not your problem anymore. For me, that's actually very, very hard, because how can I do the bare minimum when I know I could do so much better? And sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad, because that also comes with having extra stress, feeling extra responsibilities, and I put this pressure on myself to always be good. And sometimes that doesn't go very well, and it does affect my mental health. So that's something that I'm working on. I'm not saying that I'm gonna do bare minimum at work, but I'm saying I'm just gonna try to take a step back and not always feel like I always have something to prove, because I know for a fact that I have proven myself at work anyway. That's the feedback that I've got. So it's okay for me to feel less pressure or put less pressure on myself. When you move overseas, people actually have quite big expectations of you, and I get it, I get why, but it's not always nice, because I have found that people expect me to be really good, people expect me to be really successful. So having that expectation, while I know that's not necessarily a very, very bad thing, sometimes it can get really stressful, and I feel a lot of pressure to succeed. Now, the other thing is, because I live here without any family members at all, zero. So all of my family by blood, that's what I mean by blood, they were all back home. So I'm actually the only one here. Obviously, I'm with Guido, and we've been together for quite a while now, and I consider him my family, and I consider his family my family. But it's just different. It feels different to have someone from your own blood, because Filipinos are very family oriented, and I would like to say that I am. I know I've been terrible at communicating sometimes, but that doesn't mean that that's gone or that I don't care. And to not have that around you sometimes feels like, I suppose, there's less support, and sometimes that can be scary to know that I'm here on my own, and if something goes wrong, if I completely fail or whatever, sometimes I feel like I don't really have someone to fall back on. Like I said, I have Guido, and I'm not saying this is gonna happen, but if things don't work out between us or whatever, it's quite scary to know that I'm here on my own and I have to figure it out. And I think for me, that definitely taught me to be strong, to very much be independent, and really to not depend on other people. And I know that's a good thing, but also it can be hard. And because I don't have any family around, that means that I most of the time feel very homesick. Before COVID, I was able to come home almost every year, but now because of COVID, I haven't been home since February 2020 for my sister's 18th birthday. Thankfully, I was able to do that, and then straight after, lockdown happened, and I haven't been home since. So I haven't been home for just over 2 years, and I have felt homesick, and I do feel homesick. And I think that's something that if you're an immigrant who live overseas and you don't have any family and you're very close with them, you would feel homesick, and that can get quite sad sometimes. But my advice for you is that if you're in the same situation, try to just stay in touch. Don't lose that connection. I know I'm very bad with that, because sometimes life is busy and it does get in the way, and there's so many things going on. I struggle to connect or to message people back home. But every time I do come home, which hopefully I could come home Christmas this year because the borders are open, it still feels the same. I still have the same level of closeness with my family, with my sisters most especially, and with my mom, and that always feels really nice, and it's something that I look forward to every year. Because I've lived here on my own for 9 years or something, I have learned a lot of lessons, and I have also made a lot of mistakes. I'm just human. I've learned to be independent, and I've also learned to step out of my comfort zone and to actually really just build my own life. I think I would just be a very completely different person if I lived in the Philippines. I think the experiences that I would have had in the Philippines would have been very, very different here. I would just be a completely different person, mentally, emotionally. even physically maybe. So that would have been a really interesting life, but I'm very happy with the life that I built here in New Zealand and the life that I'm trying to build here in New Zealand. Having lived in New Zealand for so long, it's really opened so many experiences, and it's actually allowed me to see things very, very differently. In the Philippines, there's just certain things and certain values and beliefs in there, and those values and beliefs, it's very, very different from the values and beliefs here in New Zealand. And because I've lived here for so long, I hope I don't offend anyone, but my beliefs and my values have completely changed, and they're more related to the way of living here in New Zealand and the way people live and the values that I see from the people around me. Obviously, my values and beliefs are influenced by the people that I surround myself with, and they have very, very different beliefs, especially Guido. When we first met, our beliefs just kind of crashed, our values crashed, and that took us a while to actually learn to live together. I can confidently say that we do have, our values have now aligned because we've built a relationship together and we are building a life together. So in summary, what can I say is that when you move away from home, or when you move overseas to a different country, and most especially if you move there on your own, you might find it challenging, but also you're gonna learn so much things, and you're gonna grow so much as a person, and your eyes are gonna be open to different views or worldviews, different way of doing things, and it's really gonna challenge you as a person. I think it's definitely challenged me a good amount. My advice is just to embrace that and to just be open. It would make your life easier to have an open mind, because you will find that the people you interact with might have very, very completely different way of doing things. And that doesn't mean that you abandon your beliefs or your values back home just so you could adjust, or just so you could fit in here. If that's something you strongly believe in, then hold on to that. You don't have to let it change you, but also don't be afraid to try new things or explore new things, and challenge yourself too, and accept that challenge and be open to accepting that challenge. But if you just move overseas even for a few years, just take that experience in and really enjoy that experience. And it might be hard, but it's gonna be an experience of your life. And I'm lucky that I am a permanent resident here in New Zealand, and I get to call this my home. So I'm gonna be here for the long run. So fortunately, New Zealand, sorry, you can't really get rid of me because I'm in love with this place. But yeah, if that's not for you, or if you're only moving overseas for a few years, then enjoy it and embrace it, and you're gonna learn so much things, and you're gonna gain so much experiences, and you're gonna meet very, very interesting people. So to answer the question, am I ever gonna move back home, or am I ever gonna move back home to the Philippines? Well, the answer is, right now, if I'm being honest, my answer, and it could change, right? My answer would be no. I don't think I would move back home. I do think that I may retire there, or that I may live there for a year, maybe. Guido and I have been talking, and it's something that we're kind of both interested in, and also let him experience something different, you know. But I don't think that I would permanently move back home. I really love New Zealand, and I think New Zealand is my home. So I could talk more about my experience living here in New Zealand by myself, but it would take me hours and hours, and that would get very boring. But if you're interested to know what it's like to live in New Zealand or see a day in my life, I do have a video which I will link here or here. And I also made a house tour video to show you what it looks like to live in a rural place here in New Zealand, which I call a tiny home. I live rurally, and that means I live with cows and alpacas. So if you're interested, also I would link it either here or here. I don't even know if I'm pointing it right, maybe here or here, I don't know. It's gonna be here somewhere in the screen, so please check that out. And thank you so much for watching. Please hit that subscribe button, I would really appreciate it, and I will see you next time. Oh, I forgot to mention, the reason that I'm sitting in my car is not just because I wanted to look cool. It's actually because Guido is studying right now at home, and I didn't really want to disturb him. He has assignments that he needs to finish, and they're due very soon, so he just needs to focus. So I'm trying to be the nice girlfriend and not disturb him. And there's really nowhere else for me to film than my car, otherwise it would be too noisy outside. So that's why. If you're curious, if you're not curious, then that's just a piece of information that you now know. See ya.